Hey guys, ModelRailroadBenchwork.com here, and we are currently assembling my latest, greatest project. Now, this is David's layout, and you'll notice that it's being assembled a little differently. So, in this case, it's actually in, 12 individual modules which are assembled, and this is a multi-deck layout. But the purpose of this, which I'll explain later in the video in a normal video, but here for the time lapse, I just wanted to show you the assembly process. Starting out in the back, which is a base for a helix. I get the base layer put together, and then I'm actually going to install risers. The beauty of doing it this way is it saves space for shipping, but it also makes it a little more manageable to assemble for the end user. The heaviest module here is actually 37 pounds. So it's really, really practical for somebody to drag this into a basement or up into an attic or wherever it might end up in a layout space. And this design in particular it was designed by my client, but I actually really, really like it. So I've actually put together a couple videos on this. I didn't really cover the build of this layout so much as the end result. And that's for a couple reasons. The main one being is just more practical for me to do a final assembly time lapse like this is versus assembling an entire assembly video, especially with this particular layout because there's no surfaces and the track plan wasn't finalized yet. So we really don't know what all is actually going to be here. So it's kind of hard to explain. But in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm assembling 3 identical layers, almost identical. The second layer actually has a notch cut out of it on the back side, but otherwise all 3 layers are made the same. I use the same form for all 3 layers, so they are actually the same. They were all assembled at the same time. All the cross members were cut in pairs of 3, so it made assembling the layout a lot easier in that respect. Now you see here I've got the second layer almost installed. I've got my risers here. Now the risers actually do have notches in them, kind of like my H legs and my L-shaped legs from my standard product catalog. But the purpose of this is actually to hold everything nice and rigid. And you'll see in the real-time video starting in about 30 seconds here just how strong that is. I can actually hold myself up off the floor, which is really kind of cool. So again, this layout was designed by my client. I'm actually really, really happy with this layout. It's really cool. It's one of my favorites I've built so far. And keep in mind, I've built almost 100 custom layouts at this point. So all over the United States. I've actually shipped a couple things to Canada as well, but that tends to get expensive, so I don't end up doing that very often. So we're putting a final couple modules on here now. You'll notice that I'm using a rafter square here. And that's actually how I'm aligning the layers. So each layer gets the rafter square on there, and then I just slide it back and forth until it lines up with the layer below it. So that makes it kind of, idiot-proof, as it were, for it to line up perfectly. Now, in the case of David's case here, he actually has the easier job because I actually marked the placement for all of these components when I took it apart with permanent marker and alphabetical or numerical order for the different components, so it should be pretty easy. Well, David, here's your layout. It went together pretty quick. As you saw in the time lapse, you basically start at the helix and kind of work your way out in both directions. This design is actually very, very strong. Okay, so that was actually me holding myself off the floor with just the upper deck and then the other helix over here, so it's not going anywhere. All of the vertical risers, and the reason I built your layout this way was so you could move them. Now what this means is you can move the entire riser that supports all the way from the bottom, or you can actually cut it in half and just move the lower half or the upper half left or right as you may need to. So because your track plan is a little bit in limbo, especially for this middle deck, I wanted to give you that ability, and I also wanted to test this building method, and it's surprisingly strong. So I'm very impressed with it. Your entire layout, aside from the curved portions, is actually made out of Baltic birch, and that's what I'm going to be using going forward. So if you are interested, if anybody else watching this is interested in a layout from Model Railroad Benchwork, it's going to be made out of Baltic. I did go ahead and get your 6 foot wide trough cut into the middle deck here, so your bridge or whatever it is you're putting in there is ready to go. The 2 helixes. So as we discussed, I did make the hole 32 inches wide. However, I did also mark it every ½ inch. So if you do want to make it a little bit bigger, you can. It will also help you when you're assembling your helix kits to go ahead and center those for whatever you end up using for helixes. For those of you watching who are not David, this layout was specifically requested to not have surfaces on it. And part of that's because David is choosing to put his own on, and he's building them in what I understand is going to be a unique manner. So hopefully we'll get some pictures someday. But in the meanwhile, you know, it's a very strong layout. You know, it's not going anywhere. All combined, it's actually fairly heavy, but the beauty of this layout, the way it's designed, is it's going to be taken completely back apart into the individual modules like I started with today. And then that will all fit on one pallet. And what this does is this saves money on shipping. It also makes it a little safer to ship, so it's less likely to get banged up if it's on one pallet. So that said, this is another layout by Model Railroad Benchwork. I hope you enjoyed the video and the train, and we'll see you on the next one.